We thought that this was a pretty fitting topic for us all today as we scream through those last couple of weeks of term, that from a psychological perspective. So for those that don't know us, Denise and I specialise in psychological wellbeing and resilience. We are at the University of Canterbury, but we've both been really determinedly investigating and implementing wellbeing and resilience science for over a decade now. And one of the key findings and learnings is that in terms of your resilience, when you are going through tough times, it's really important to pause sufficiently to be able to look back and notice what you have achieved and take a strengths-based approach to that. So that is what we're going to do today.
And I just want to say, and full disclosure, I think this has been a really challenging year for most of us. In fact, everyone I've spoken to. And so there's perhaps a little bit of wish fulfillment here in finishing well to remind us of the fact that we are in the home straight and we are finishing. And I think really we're all looking forward to that.
What we thought we would do is talk to you about these four letters to start off with. So actually use that wavy thing or use the chat. Have you heard, do you know what PTSD stands for? Put your hand up to put a thumbs up using that little thing, or yeah, that's all good. So you all know what post-traumatic stress disorder is. And even if you don't know everything about it and know all of the diagnosis, you probably know that it's tough times that comes from trauma. Yeah. So I think it's really true that most people are aware of post-traumatic stress disorder. What about this concept here? What do you think this is? Anyone want to put it in chat and have a guess at this one? More complicated. So this is referring to post-traumatic growth, and really important. So Denise and I both learned about this when we were studying at the University of Pennsylvania, and for me this has been a really vital concept. So some of you will know that I lost my daughter 6 years ago now, and I was really relieved to at least know that although awful things come with trauma, and I will not deny that for a second, there is also very frequently growth appears alongside trauma. And what makes me cross is that there isn't really enough acknowledgement of that. So what we want to do to you today is literally just introduce to you two strengths-based concepts to get you thinking about how you can finish off this year well. So first I'm going to share with you, I'm going to hope I can get my clickers to work. That's the definition of post-traumatic growth. So you can see there that essentially it is saying that it is a positive psychological change. That's important, but also it's in the wake of struggling with highly challenging circumstances. I think we can all say that 2020 does
fits
that.
The bill.
Yeah, fits the bill. And earlier on in this year, I'd been asked to write for the International Journal of Appreciative Inquiry on a specific issue where they were looking at when grief and growth come together. And I remember when we were first asked to write this piece thinking, wow, that's quite groundbreaking of them, that they're really realizing how often grief and growth come together. And so this is actually the front cover of that journal article. And I just put this image in here because I'll let you just have a quick look at it for a moment. And Denise was saying how much she likes this continual, that this is what grieving is about, and coping with trauma and loss and change is about moving from despair and rage and shock and denial into acceptance and compassion and all of these things. And I can tell you from a personal level, sometimes you can do all of these in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So that was just to kind of introduce the idea that this is possible. And here on the screen in front of me are the 5 characteristics of post-traumatic growth. So if we just have a quick look at these, start to have a think about your own working and home life, your whānau too, your colleagues, your community? Where have you seen these occur this year? Have you experienced an increased sense of personal strength, perhaps? Lots of the literature shows when people are going through really traumatic periods of challenge and change, how often they are surprised by their ability to be able to navigate even really tough times. I think we can all agree we've probably seen witness change relationships. We've certainly done things differently, and you will have seen so many of your educators work in completely different ways and continue to be able to forge a relationship with the akonga even when we were in lockdown and when it was online. I'm hoping you all sense some new possibilities, even on December the 3rd. And certainly challenge has taught me a greater appreciation of life. And I think we've all had conversations this year, haven't we, about...
And Lucy, I would just add that, you know, for many people, they'll be saying, oh, well, look, it hasn't been that hard for me. None of my family have been sick and no one's lost their job. It doesn't have to be huge trauma with a capital T for there to be loss and grief. This year, I think, has challenged all of us in many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's no doubt about that. And then the last box there, the fifth domain, is meaning kind of a growth in your sense of what is important, what is life all about, you know, that kind of those big spiritual and existential questions and challenges that trauma and grief can bring. So our point today is not to give you a long lecture and all of the nuts and bolts of post-traumatic growth, but really in sharing these slides just to get you to think that psychology has absolutely recognized that growth very often comes from challenge, change, and trauma. And in fact, there's even evidence that shows that the higher your level of trauma, the higher level of growth, making that more likely. So we thought for the first breakout room, we've got a few breakout rooms for you today to give you some time to think about how you can relate this material to your professional and personal lives. So the first one is to go and have a discussion about what have you learned about yourself this year? Where have you surprised yourself in your capacity to keep going? And what are you most proud of?
I think this is lovely. And one of the themes that came through was the acceptance of difference and the pulling together and acting as a team. And I think these are lovely. And it is really, we're going to come back again and again to this thing of why it's really important to spend a little time thinking about what went well and what we're proud of, especially coming to the end of the year. Now, Lucy is going to share our screen again with you. One of the things that you know has been important through this year is it's been a really challenging year, and people have pulled together. They have stepped up and taken on enormous challenges all over the world. And this one, we just want to share this one with you. I really liked the idea of these NHS staff supporting each other, working in really, really challenging circumstances. And they in this hospital in Derby, they set up a wobble room so that if you were at a point where you felt you really weren't going to be able to cope, you could go somewhere and not cope for 5, 10, whatever many minutes you needed. And this was the sign that's on the wall in the wobble room. And I think this has been a theme actually that's been big for us in New Zealand, that whole you're not alone, he whakaaro noa, the kindness, embracing the challenge. And I love that. That is a call to post-traumatic growth. We will all learn something new if we can embrace this challenge. And then the last piece of the need to look after each other. So I think it's nice to remind ourselves that, yep, We're tired because we have all stepped up. We have all taken on challenges, and there's a lot to be proud of. So what we want to do is to give you some time for a little bit of personal reflection on this theme. And so in your first breakout room, it was about what you surprised yourself with. But now we want you to extend your thinking to the people around you, the people that were in your teams and in your learning communities, and to think about, well, what or who surprised you in terms of their capacity to flex, to creatively solve the problems that came up, to be able to support others or to step up in other ways. And what we want to do is to give you 3 minutes to grab a piece of paper, and think of this as your advanced thank you list. This is who are the people that are going to need thank yous for doing this work. We often, I love when I write Christmas cards to our staff, because it makes me stop, pause, and reflect on what is it that I'm grateful for these people. So this is a few minutes to think about this question. Who are the people in your learning community that surprised you with any of these capacities this year? And who will you want to thank? Time to make a note. Okay, has everybody had, we've had a little bit of time to think about this, and we've done our own quick one for our organization. And what I love about this is it's actually giving ourselves the time to focus on the contributions people have made, which allows us to label them, which makes it easier to actually thank them when we see them, to value and appreciate the contributions that everyone in our community has made throughout the year.
And it is such an important resilience competency, isn't it? To actually spend the time and think and notice and label amongst other people, some of whom no doubt will be the most unexpected people in your learning community. Probably a couple of pesky parents could do with a pat on the back for winding their neck in the middle of some point of the year. So I think it is about that, choosing where you focus your attention, isn't it?
And you know, there are, we've been hearing from so many schools that teams that previously had a lot of criticism of each other or of the leadership did wind their necks in and focus on getting down and doing the mahi that needed to be done, and putting the larger goal of looking after the students and the whole community together. Yeah.
So now is the moment to pause, consider, notice, identify, and in so many different ways. I think that's what we were talking about, is so to think really broadly and make sure you go back and say to those people, hey, I seriously appreciated that you did this. We noticed that you managed to do whatever it is, because that way you are more likely to amplify that behavior. And also what we all know is you then felt seen when someone actually verbalizes and takes the time to do that. And feeling valued and feeling seen and noticed and heard is also a great buffer against burnout, isn't it?
We all have experienced it. The time where your contribution has been valued and noticed literally puts fuel in your tank. And so all of this is about appreciation. So we're going to come on and think about how could we have a review at the end of the year that is appreciative and strengths focused. So most of us are familiar with the idea of a SWOT analysis of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And SOAR is an alternative that comes from the stable of appreciative inquiry. And with SOAR, what we're saying is, let's focus on our strengths and ask the question, what did we do really well this year? And then think about our opportunities. So given where we are and what's happened, what's possible for us? What are the opportunities we can see ahead? Then our aspirations. What are the dreams that we have? There are some doors with the opportunities. There are some doors that have opened. Things that, like communities that are now more appreciative. Aspirations, what do we want to do with this? With where we find ourselves now, what are our hopes and dreams for 2021? And then the results piece, that this is you soar high, but you are anchored in reality. So when you are building on these strengths and pursuing these aspirations, how will you know they're working?
So Greg's going to, here you go, put though you're going to put those questions in the chat for us, Greg. And what we thought we'd ask you to do now is pick one of those questions.
Move on one slide.
And you're going to go into a breakout room, a pretty short one this time, with the same people you were in last time, and continue that conversation, but using this SOAR framework. So I think we decided just 3 minutes, so it's a quick fire round. You've got one question you're going to take with you into that breakout, quick fire round, and then come back and tell us more. Thank you.
So we are going to share our screen again. And so this is really thinking about the questions and which ones you might need. But where the action really is where are you going to have an opportunity to use some of the questions we've thought about today, whether it's looking for the growth, whether that's in relationships, in sense of meaning, in new skills, or how could you use an appreciative approach like SOAR? Where are the opportunities going to be in the next few weeks for you and your community to use these tools and these frameworks to support hope and build confidence and resilience? And I think that's so important at this time of year, that we don't feel we crawl over the finish line, but that we pat each other on the back going, that was good.
And that we're a bit more intentional about our practice at this time, even when we're exhausted and we can sense the end. I think for me, these two frameworks give us a structure to consider the year behind and the year ahead and the holidays too. And so I guess it is, this final breakout is about, we'd like you to be really having a discussion about, with both of these frameworks, tools, whatever you call them, could you use them, for instance, in your, when you're talking to your staff at your wrap-up party, in your kind of end-of-year communications, in your end-of-year reviews, in your prize giving? You know, SOAR would be a really good prize giving speech framework, or even at the teacher-only day at the start of next year. So we thought if we gave you a good amount of time in a different breakout room, so you're going to go and talk to different people, it's a moment to all kind of brainstorm together. You know your learning communities better than us. You know, where can you make these two tools work for you? How can you introduce the idea of post-traumatic growth and SOAR?
Kia ora koutou and welcome back. I hope you've enjoyed having a chance to talk about where and how you could use the idea of post-traumatic growth or the SOAR principles to encourage your learning community at the end of this year to leave having reflected on growth and strengths. And we just want to share, will you share that last slide, Lucy, with people? And it really is just, it is the slide that sums up all our conversation today. And it is around this lovely idea that what we focus on grows. This is absolutely at the heart of appreciative inquiry. And given that what we focus on grows, it is a huge missed opportunity if we rush on without noticing the good. It's not, even getting a chance to talk about this stuff today makes me feel less tired and more enthusiastic about next year. It is an opportunity, and let's not rush past it in our haste to stumble over the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've really enjoyed being with you today. Thanks, kia ora koutou, and we wish you all well in the coming weeks.